There is business and there is pleasure. And when it comes to taking a trip, sometimes those two things can come together in a pretty magical way. Well, this has been a thing. Like people have been doing this for a very long period of time. But now, in the age of new made up words and social media, there's a term for this. It's called bleisure. So you can have your business trip, maybe some fun things on the side too. And we're going to talk about how to make that work. Our guest is Jessica Moorhouse. She is a personal finance expert. She's also a wise partner, and she joins us to talk about how to make this work for you. Hello, Jessica.
Hello.
What exactly is bleisure? What does this term
Bleisure.
mean? And if you're watching, this on YouTube, you can see my facial expression because I'm kind of raising an eyebrow about the latest made up phrase for something
Yeah.
that's been around for a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that new name, but this has been around for millions of years. As long as there's been business travel, there's been bleisure. So it really just means when you have a business trip, tack on a couple extra days, usually after you've done your business stuff, to have a nice little vacay. And I've been doing this for years, didn't know there was a
Yeah.
name for it. So now there is, which is great. But whenever I have some opportunity, some other company is paying for my travel to do like a speaking engagement, I usually add on a day or two to, if especially if it's a place I've never been to kind of explore things and make it a nice little trip. I actually just have a booking for a speaking thing in March. And it's kind of right near the US border. So I told my husband, like, guess what? We're going to Detroit for a fun little vacay. I don't care. I'll go anywhere for a vacation. But, it's like we're going to be there anyway. Might as well make the most of it, right?
The benefit for the individual is super clear. You get to go do something new. You've probably got part of your travel subsidized. Amazing,
Hmm.
amazing. I think there are benefits too for the employer. And I'll tell you, this is years ago when I was in the corporate world. My employer at the time would allow us to spend a certain amount of money if we traveled over a weekend because flights were
Uh-huh.
way, way cheaper if you didn't travel during the week for business
Hmm.
trips. And so we would get, I don't know how much we got, like a couple $100 for a hotel if we came back on a Sunday instead of a Friday or something like that.
Hmm.
Talk a bit about what's in it for the employer to be willing to allow people to make this happen.
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, not only can it maybe save them some money because you can be like, hey, maybe we get a better rate if we book, 3 nights instead of just one at the hotel. But also, for example, the trip that I'm kind of planning on is, me and my husband are going to be driving, so we're not going to actually have to rent a car. We're going to just drive in our car, saving a bunch of money for everybody. But I'd say like the biggest benefit is actually kind of twofold. It's the employer and the employee big benefit is when there's some data that shows that when employees do kind of go on a little vacation just 1 or 2 nights after the fact, they're not only going to be more refreshed and more productive at work because they've been able to kind of relax a
Mm.
little bit. And, business travel can kind of be stressful a little bit. So if you have something to kind of look forward to, it makes the trip all around better. But then you come back to the office refreshed and ready to work and more productive. Who doesn't want that?
What are the things, what does it take to make this combination work? And
Mhm.
I ask because I love a burger and fries. I love ice cream, but
Yeah.
I do not want a scoop of ice cream on my burger. It's going to wreck the burger. Those two things need to be separate.
Yeah, I mean, it's about kind of mentally compartmentalizing a little bit. So it's like, okay, day one, that's where the meetings are or the event is happening. Let's focus on that. But then once, like, usually when the meeting's over, you go back to your hotel room and you can relax. You're like, oh, that's over. Now we can just have fun. And so really when it comes to planning this type of thing, it's really having a clear, okay, this is business day one and then pleasure 2 and 3, days 2 and 3. And then really figuring out a plan. What are we going to do during those days? And how can we also just optimize things to actually save some money on this trip? Because, we've all been on vacation and spent a little bit more than we want to. And so It's really important to be strategic when it comes to how are we spending our money? How can we actually get a deal doing this? And there's a lot of different things you can do. Of course, I always recommend if you're, banking some travel points, hey, what a great way to start using some of those. Since you are on a business trip, see if there's some corporate discounts. I'm sure there
Mm.
is through your employer about like renting a car or things like that, or even discounts for restaurants. I always recommend if you can, when you are in this city, to kind of, save some gas. Public transportation makes you feel like a local, but especially too if you are crossing the border, or maybe you've got a really exciting international trip in Europe or Asia or something like that. Really make sure you've got a plan for how you're spending your money and that currency conversion, because that is what really can eat into your kind of travel budget. Now, one thing I've been using for a number of years for business and pleasure is my Wise account. They have kind of some of the best rates and very low fees compared to competitors, especially using a credit card that can charge you some fees, marked up exchange rate, things like that. Very easy to use. Comes in like 40 different currencies, 160 countries. They use the mid-market currency exchange rate, which is a really like the best rate you can pretty much get. And the fee that you're paying is they're very transparent about fees, because most financial institutions are not. They bake it in. They just charge you on average about 0.67% for that transfer fee. So it's something I use so I can not only know, okay, what is my Canadian convert into US, but then also how can I save the most money possible instead of using, one of those currency,
Mm.
exchange places at the airport or something like that, that just charge
Right.
you an arm and a
Yes,
leg.
never do that. I
Yeah.
wonder who uses those places at the airport. Because
People who didn't
expensive
plan
pay.
ahead.
Didn't plan ahead. So I am a huge advocate for travel for myself as an employee, and I always have been. Now I'm an employer, and I've got people who work at
Yeah.
our organization. There is a part of me as a leader in the organization that I will say Bleisure doesn't count. And the reason is, for the very best break, I want my people to take an entire week off. So this is nice at the
Hmm.
margins, but
Hmm.
I don't think we should fool ourselves that the restorative benefit of a vacation is going to be as much tacking on a couple of days to a business trip as it would be from a full week completely disconnected, where our work laptop is not sitting on the bed of the hotel staring at us to be opened.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it could be. I mean, personally, I don't think there's an either or. I think you can do both. I think you can save some of your vacation time, go on that 1 or 2 week trip. But then if you're doing business travel anyway, you've got a couple extra days. Or sometimes if your business trip is, okay, the thing is on the Friday, you've got the full weekend before you have to get into the office. Might as well just stay there. You don't even have to use any vacation days. But what I usually find with a lot of people that I come in contact with who are an employee, work that 9 to 5 kind of job, most people, especially if they have families, they don't take a week off or 2 weeks off. They are using each day very strategically. Oh, okay, well, we have to have 2 days to visit the family for the holidays, or we have, they usually kind of divvy up these days. So most people don't honestly take like a good chunk of time off. I don't think I have more than, yeah, maybe once in the past 8 years. I always do more mini trips because sometimes they're more affordable and more economical. And it just makes more sense with
Clearly, I
kind of my
have to be in
schedule.
charge of your
I
calendar
know, maybe you
from
should be
here
my
on
travel
in.
agent. Yeah.
I am ruthless with our folks about taking that full time off so they can have the full decompression that includes. Okay,
Mhm.
one last question here. Looking at it from an employer perspective, there are some employers who get a little like amped up about ensuring that you are productive while at work, that
Yeah.
you expense only the things that are related to business travel. Are there any pitfalls you'd flag about an employer feeling like, wait a second, I don't want to be looking at your Instagram, seeing a beautiful shot of you when you were supposed to be in a boring basement conference room?
That sounds like a really fun employer to work
Yeah,
for.
yeah, they exist. Not for me, but they
Not for me.
exist.
Well, I'd say if you are the employee in that situation and your employer is very much like that, make sure that you are keeping your receipts, you are doing your due diligence, you're keeping a record of everything. So if they do come to you and be like, "I saw you on the beach, shouldn't you have been in the conference?" You're like, "Well, actually, that was the day after we had the business meeting, and then I tacked on a few extra days, and here are all my receipts for the business portion, and I didn't go over, and I used what you said I could use. Everything else is on my personal stuff. So you can't get mad at me. It's personal time. it's a vacation. What, so here's the evidence. So I always say, if you feel like you're in that situation, the best thing you can do is record everything, make sure that you provide them everything so they cannot complain.
And then if they're like really difficult, start working on your resume on your
Yeah, I was
next
just gonna say,
walk
like,
and
maybe it's
find.
time to find a cool new
Yeah.
employer that is a little bit more
Yeah.
flexible. I mean, come on.
Jessica, thank you for your time. This was work, but I hope you have some leisure to follow.
Oh, this is always leisure for me. I'm having a great time
Nice,
all the time.
nice. Jessica Moorhouse, personal finance expert, wise partner, was here to talk about this new term called bleisure, which I love the creation of new words, but basically it's when you combine business with pleasure.